Okay, so I'm gonna go on my little spiel. Can you bear with me? Like, I was telling you about that book, the Sylvia Federici, Caliban and the Witch. And actually, when I was here in April, I was on a panel with her, which was kind of cool. And she's really interesting, but like part of her argument is that capitalism sort of comes into being after the plague because there's not enough workers to make the labor model profitable. Like, you know, if you have church lands and you want them worked, you have to pay a lot of money during the plague to get them worked because there aren't that many people to do it. So they're all at a premium. And people are kind of like, we're going to die anyway. Let's just go, like, tie one on. And it was, like, apparently a very happy and kind of egalitarian time besides the plague. So, but she's looking at, like, art from that period and stuff. It's an interesting theory. And she says that from there, you know, the church decides we need to get control over reproduction. We need to make more people. So we're going to institute the sodomy laws, and we're going to get control over women's bodies. We need basically to militarize our incubators, women's bodies, so that they keep churning them out so that we have a population that we can exploit. And we only want to pay one wage. We're going to pay men the wage. Women are just going to make the babies. So making children is not going to give you any freedom. You're going to have to be strapped to a man who earns a wage. And so this whole structure was created. All these heretics left the church, whatever. Anyway, part of what's intrinsic to her argument is that population control is intrinsic to what capitalism is. That capitalism comes into being with the concept of getting control over the population. Now, currently, that model of capitalism doesn't really work anymore because now we have machines that can do our jobs. We've got the capacity to clone, which hasn't really been realized yet, but probably will be. And we've got more population than we need for labor. So the whole model, the whole fabric of society that was created around a capitalism of the body, you know, in response to the plague, it kind of no longer really fits the needs of that power, plus the fact that the population is huge now. So there's this whole question of, like, how do you control the population? Like, yeah, there's more technology, and there's more arms, and there's more weapons, and there's bigger armies, and what have you, drones, etc. But there's so many more people. And I'm sure there are economists and people out there, you know, I don't know who does this, but calculating sort of military might versus human power and what it takes to control that. And I suspect that that's getting a little bit unwieldy. So I look at all of this and I think to myself, you know, the corporatocracy really has to come up with a new economic model to maintain power. So it actually needs a revolution, in a way. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that this movement has to be really awake, because it's not just that, you know, we've had every generation where the language of revolution gets co-opted and taken into advertising and, you know, at this level. I think at a fundamental level, we're talking about an economic revolution which power needs. And maybe in a way that's why it's being allowed. And so I think making it into a people's world it is kind of our opportunity in a way. But I also think the danger is very, very, very real and very deep. You know, that this can also be the passage into a capitalism that works and that is not even less visible than what we've had.
This is a movement of the people, right?
Look at this square, there's thousands.
So what did you say before? So say what you said before.
What I was saying is that abstract morality is a source of violence, essentially. That when you appeal to something like the Ten Commandments, when you appeal to a higher authority, an abstract authority, you're actually not taking responsibility for anything. Like, that's how we're trained to take responsibility, but it's doing the opposite in a way. Because you're not talking to anything. There's no relationship to other people. Like, the way that you take responsibility and have a society that actually has some kind of ability to communicate with each other is to be accountable to each other. And that's not abstract. That's very present, right? So that's like something like a devotion to the social, a devotion to the people around you, the people you're affecting, the people your actions are having an impact on as much as you can be aware of them. Whereas, you know, if you're just not killing because God says don't kill, or because you feel that it's wrong to not kill, or because liberalism says don't kill, that's never really going to make you understand what's going on with killing. That's just you following a mandate. Whereas if you're actually like looking at the people around you and the devastation you would do to a community by killing someone, or to that person, or to yourself, or any of it, that's a much realer form of responsibility. So that's why I was just saying, like, we need a truly post-Catholic world. Because all of this, I mean, even when we say it's atheism and it's not Catholic and it's just liberalism, but we're still using abstract ethics and morality, all of this goes back to the same kind of Catholic structure. And that Catholic structure came into being basically in order to control people, right? It was in order to make people not accountable to each other, but to the church. And liberalism is perpetuating that. It's, you know, it's you're going to be accountable to the government. You're going to be accountable to this bigger thing. And what you get in exchange for that is you actually don't really have to be accountable. You don't really have to think about it.
Mic check! Mic check! My name is Anna Lou.
Yeah, we're in Foley. Where are you?
And they're cutting our financial grant. They're
You're where?
raising our tuition. And then,
Okay, where are you at?
millionaires
Where are you
sitting
at?
there
We're over by the big black pick fountain.
taking breaks.
Top corporate
Okay.
criminals of the 1990s. Exxon pled guilty in connection to federal criminal charges with the Valdez spill
No
and paid
tax
$125 million in criminal fines. General Electric was guilty of
Why?
defrauding the federal government and paid $9.5 million in criminal fines. Chevron was guilty of of environmental violations and paid $6.5 million. Mitsubishi was guilty of antitrust violations and paid $1.8 million. IBM was guilty of illegal exports and paid $8.5 million. Was guilty of environmental violations. Pfizer, the drug manufacturer, was guilty of antitrust violations and was guilty of food and drug regulatory violations. Sears was guilty of financial fraud. Blue Shield of Illinois. 60 was guilty of fraud. Georgia Caribbean Airlines tax and guilty finance violation. It paid $250,000. LaRouche, guilty of antitrust violation, paid $500 million in criminal fines.
Occupying Wall Street. We're 99%. And we're here today. We're 99%.
I mean, if we're just talking in like huge broad strokes, which is how I'm talking, I would say that anything that looks at the individual as separate, like you can run away from other people, like you can have your own land, like you can set up your own borders. You know, there's an anti-social quality to that that's impossible. It's just, you know, it's really like, it's too deeply tied to property and self and the ownership of the self, and you can't have mutual negotiation in that. Like, I really think we need to dream something where we, like, live together and think mutuality in some way. I mean, it doesn't work if I'm like a slave to everyone else's needs and I don't think about my own. Like, you have to actually take care for yourself as well. But and I mean, I don't know how to formulate this. This is something that I think people have to like think together. Like, it has to be people from different walks of life with different experience over time, reflecting on like what works and what doesn't work. It's not going to be like a constitution that gets written overnight and is fixed and finished and can't be revised. Like, it's a process where that the General Assembly, you know, we're dreaming of creating like how to coexist. You know, not rule, but coexist.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's so interesting about putting it into a
is
constitution.
an ongoing thing
format.
that goes on forever. Like, it's never.
I even take it as far as
it's never
art
done.
is
It's never
their
fixed.
job
There's
that
never a set
breaks
of rules that can't be like re-examined
give
and
us his
rethought.
symbol inventive
There's never a,
of some
you
discontent,
know, like
so we can
not quarantined
that
in the
we
art
change,
That's really what
like
I'm
the
inferring
recognition
is
of change.
right
and
now,
recognition
everybody
of,
in our
like,
country is
evolution
starting to pay.
and
And so to come out with demands really early, it could be so like labeled by the media into silence.
Just because this is what was happening in Italy in the 90s. I mean, it's been destroyed. The government has come in different places that it's happened. You know, squats that were cities where they had their own schools, their own currencies, their own everything. But I mean, now there's really momentum to do this, and there's like the way that labor and capital are being distributed in the U.S., like in the sense that there's not enough money to pay for the amount of labor that exists here now. The multifariousness of this is confusing the hell out of people in power, and that's very important to do.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not sure who to respond to and who where the threat is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all really great stuff. And like having them in a dialogue, like in a way, yes, right at will by time. You know, keep them in a dialogue to government is going to be that. But I think the real work to me is really like keep it growing and just build the new world, and don't worry about government. Like, just, and when they come and they want to wrest that stuff and get control over it, I mean, you know, that's when the resistance happens, right? Right now we're just DIYing our way all the way from like tiny little record labels into politics.
Hey everybody! I got out of jail this morning. I thought a lot about, you know, how we were going to continue and where we're going to go from here. It's a long fight. Everybody here knows that, I hope. And I think two answers to that are one, direct democracy.
Yeah.
GA in every block, everywhere. Practice, talk to each other, identify issues, solve them together with direct democracy. And secondly, direct action. People need to get out there. They need to lose their fear one at a time. It's okay. You can fight back. When 400 people break the park and they take all our material things, that's nothing. It doesn't matter. This is a movement, and a movement's an idea. This is about social and economic justice, and you can't take that with 400 riot police. You cannot. So again, I want to say, this is just the beginning. All right, right here. The slate's wiped clean. We're starting again. This is just the beginning. I want to tell you about some dates, some direct action.
Yeah.
For Mimi, on December 6th, we're doing a housing action. We are taking back homes. We will take back foreclosed property.
Excuse me?
Then, in the spring, after we've made it through this winter, which we know we will, we're going to have the biggest party that you've ever seen.
Phone's like jam.
Ever.
Yeah, mine is too.
To celebrate that. And finally, in the summer, we're going to take on the system in the largest way we can think. We're going to come together in the largest convergence ever this summer. You will all see, and I know you'll all be there. Thank you so much. Love you all. We are the 99%.
What we need to talk about and think about are the fictions that are involved. And one is that even when you are curled up in that ball and you're telling people to fuck off and go away, are you really alone even then? I mean, what's going on in your head is full of people. A lot of it very often is, it's like the desire to burn through the crowd that you've internalized or something. But I think that even in those moments, and 500 years of conformity, right? That's now taken on the face of like liberal versus conservative or whatever it is, man versus woman. I mean, whatever it is, it's like we do have other ways of looking at things, but we're just very young at it. Having space or taking something for yourself or needing something.
No puedo creer lo que mis ojos están viendo. La guerra y la mentira siempre están en aumento. Huestes marginales siempre están en detrimento. Lo que ellos no saben que la culpa es del poder. Políticos de siempre que se venden por dinero. Controlan y destruyen la vida de un pueblo obrero. Juegan con las almas como si fuera de ellos. Lo que ellos no saben que las almas son de Dios. I like this night because we are the fight. I don't have more time, but it's very important this day for me and for you, because we need change. When? I don't listen to you. When? Necesitamos el cambio. Ahora. Ahora. Make the whole world is here. Y no nos vamos.